Great. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you, Senator Whitley, for joining us today. And Sara, maybe because we are small right now, maybe we could quickly just go around and introduce ourselves just so the senator has a sense for who's on the screen this morning with her. That's and I can start and just kind of pass it around. My name is Brooke Freeland. I'm the managing director of the Couch Family Foundation, which is a philanthropic foundation that's focused on early childhood development. Is our strategic focus for our philanthropic giving, primarily in the Upper Valley region of New Hampshire and Vermont. I reside outside of the state, but grew up in the Upper Valley. And so my heart is still there, even though I'm not a registered voter there anymore. And I'll pass it to Sara, my partner in crime here on the Advocacy Workgroup.
Hi, good morning, all. I am here with the snow coming down in the Upper Valley, and I am a longtime social worker in the region, and now work as a consultant with the Couch Family Foundation, sort of part of the boots on the ground part of the initiative in the area. And I'll pass it to Sunny.
Hi, I am Sunny McFeetris, and I am from Dartmouth College. I'm the director of the Childcare Center at the college. And I will pass it to Andra, who's right beside me on my screen.
I'm Andra Dunhauer. I'm an eco-psychologist who is serving as the interim project manager for this initiative right now. And I will pass it to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. And I realized that my name on Zoom is not accurate because I did a board meeting. So my name's actually Mariah Davis. Nice to meet you all. I was very confused for a second. So I represent Mascoma Bank and then also Mascoma Bank Foundation, which both do their own philanthropy, and Childcare is sort of an initiative that we're looking at in 2022. So just here to kind of learn information, and it's been very valuable so far. I will pass this over to Amy.
Thank you, Mariah, for Mascoma investing in early childhood. We received a grant recently, and thank you very much. It's super helpful. I'm Amy Brooks. I've been with you a few times, Senator, and Executive Director of the Early Care and Education Association. And I will pass to Michael.
Thanks, Amy. So Michael Bennett, I'm a program officer with the Couch Family Foundation, and I also sit on the steering committee of the New Hampshire Early Childhood Funders Collaborative, which is a new affinity group of the New Hampshire Funders Forum, and it's a subgroup of institutional funders and family foundations and other groups that are really interested in building good systems of care for young children in New Hampshire. So who should I pass it to? I will pass it to Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Swanson. I manage community health at Alice Peck Day Memorial Hospital, and I am able to participate in this meeting right now because daycare was open this morning. So, I recognize personally the value of having affordable, available, reliable daycare. We want to make sure that our employees have that, and we also want to make sure that the community has it. And I joined a few minutes late, so I don't know who's gone and who hasn't. So if you haven't gone, if you could raise your hand, that would be great. So I'll pass it to Julia.
Hi, Julia Griffin, town manager in Hanover. And among other things, the town also provides an after-school program. We have over 150 kids enrolled. And are struggling to staff that. And we also provide an 8-week summer playground program, which our Department of Recreation staffs, which is relied upon by many working parents in the region. So I have a direct vested interest as well as a professional commitment to trying to work on this issue on behalf of our residents. And I will pass this on to Rebecca.
Is that everyone?
I think Erica and Janet, yeah, and Rachel.
And Tammy.
Erica, why don't you go and I'll pass it around.
Okay, hi, I'm Erica Moen. I'm faculty at Geisel School of Medicine at Dartmouth, and I am a working parent. I'll pass it off to Janet.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet Hunt, and I work for New Futures, which is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works to make sure our laws we work to make sure the laws our legislators pass support the health and wellness of New Hampshire citizens. And I'll pass it to Rachel.
Hi, I am the Subsidy and Referral Program Manager over at the Family Place. My name is Rachel Williams, and I'm going to leave my screen off because I do not have childcare this morning. Who hasn't gone yet? I'm sorry. Tammy, have you gone?
Yeah, and it might be hard. I know Tammy's kind of working, so it might be hard for her to go off mute. So oh.
It is. I am working, but I only have a couple, so it's going to make it easier today. I'm a home provider in Thetford, and it sounded like you were talking about why you're doing this. So I've just become very passionate about this because I have a wait list that is the longest that it's ever been in my 20 years of business. And if nothing, there's really nothing else to say. I wouldn't have that wait list if we didn't have this crisis. So it needs to be fixed. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Great. I think that is everybody. All right, Sara, can I hand it back to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, everyone. It's good to see you. It's very snowy where I am in Hopkinton. This behind me is the State House, and I'm sure it looks similar to this today. So I'm also a working parent. I have a second grader who's home today, still in his PJs on a snow day. So, I come to this work with my own personal experience. I have one kiddo, but we've experienced all the trials and tribulations of childcare, until he went to school. So just a little bit about my background. So I started practicing law at the Disability Rights Center, and I was there for many years. I actually have a real soft spot in my heart for the Upper Valley. I spent 3 years there when I was a student at Vermont Law School. So I love that community. I know, what a unique community it is. And I'm familiar with Vital Communities and all the work that, they have done to build community. And I think it's incredible the focus that the community has made on early childhood because it's so important. After I was with the Disability Rights Center for almost a decade, representing children and families and individuals with disabilities in systemic litigation, individual representation, but really got a front row seat to system issues and system deficiencies, frankly. And but then actually when I had my own son, my career path was really directed, honestly, by my own experience as a mother. I wanted to step away from practicing law and spend more time with him. And so I did a couple of years consulting with the Environmental Defense Fund, sort of shifting my focus a little bit to climate action, but focusing on how climate impacts children's health and, of course, our children's future. And then I was lured back into the traditional workspace when my son went to elementary school. And for a couple of years, I was the policy director for the Children's Behavioral Health Collaborative, which was an initiative that was actually housed at New Futures. And there I did a few years of lobbying and trying to think about how to better serve our most vulnerable children and families in the children's mental health system and in the child protection system. So really that was, you know, a collaborative work with a lot of different stakeholders looking at system reform. So I have a real interest and background, you know, in making sure that all the systems we set up to serve our children and families really work for them, right? And that families are not falling through, you know, the cracks. So now, so I ran for office. Actually, it's not political aspirations were not part of my career plan, but sort of all my work really led up to where I am now. And so this is my second year as a senator for District 15. I represent the capital city of Concord, Henniker, Hopkinton, and Warner. And in the Senate, I'm on the Health and Human Services Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and have continued my work in supporting children and families and working families. You know, children are my favorite people on the planet. I feel like, you know, there's so much work that we need to do to support children and families. They're the future of our state. So for the past 2 years, I've been trying to, you know, make sure that my colleagues in the Senate and the legislature really understand the crisis that we are in the early childhood space and in early childhood education and care. So I would love to talk about a few bills that I've worked on that I initiated. So my goals today, talk about some of the bills, talk about, you know, some advocacy that perhaps you folks would be interested in, and then, you know, hear from you about anything that, you know, you in particular think that the legislature is really ignoring. So really nuts and bolts. Last session, I introduced a bill. It was Senate Bill 144, and it was looking at the Childcare Scholarship Program. So folks may know that in the Childcare Scholarship Program, the way that we reimburse providers was on an attendance-based rather than enrollment-based. And I heard from so many folks that that was just unworkable for so many different reasons for both providers and for families. And so it was a simple policy to shift that reimbursement. There was broad support for the policy, but unfortunately it didn't get across the finish line last session. We actually ran into most opposition from the Department of Health and Human Services, unfortunately. And so this session that we took up the bill again, and we negotiated at length with the department and agreed to a pilot program to sort of test the new reimbursement program. And that's important actually, because as we move into developing the next budget, so in New Hampshire, we develop the budget biannually every other year. So next year we'll be tackling the state budget again. And so the pilot program will give us an important look into how much it will actually cost the state. And right now, you know, we have flexibility in New Hampshire right now, like we have never had before, with an influx of federal dollars. And so it is an important time to sort of test those with these sort of short-term dollars to test things like this. So I am hopeful that we'll see some progress in the Child Care Scholarship Program, both in this reimbursement, but also in eligibility. I know folks have worked really hard for a long time to adjust eligibility so more families can access the program and that we can get those dollars out the door. So that's Senate Bill 144. This session, I have 3 early childhood bills. The first bill is Senate Bill 446, and we're calling it the Workforce Behind the Workforce bill. So this is it's a child care workforce investment bill. So we've created a fund to help retain and attract folks to the early childhood workforce. We have heard, you know, just time and time again how you know, the wait lists, of course, are because, you know, we can't retain a workforce in this super important sector. We've also heard from businesses that they are desperate to help support this sector so they can get employees and keep their current employees. So this bill, I'm really happy about the trajectory so far. It's been a bipartisan bill. I work very closely with Senator Erin Hennessy from District 1 up north. She's a Republican. And she cares deeply about families. She has a family of her own. She understands what it's like to be a working parent. So we have worked on this bill together. This bill is still in the Senate HHS committee. We're working on, again, with HHS to try to get something that's really workable for everyone. But we hope it will be a game changer and a bridge to further federal investment. We know that there's continued to be federal bipartisan support for investment in early childhood. And so this is an important bridge to that more structural change and investment from the federal government. So that's Senate Bill 446. The other bill is more of a system bill. So Senate Bill 326, it creates the Office of Early Childhood. So in the children's behavioral health space, we have worked for decades on governance issues, sort of structural issues about how to, in state government, better create systems where families don't fall through the cracks. But we need to do that in the early childhood space also. So many states and many reports actually in New Hampshire have recommended the creation of an Office of Early Childhood as a separate department of state government that really tries to integrate and streamline all the alphabet soup of early childhood programs, both federal, state, and local, to really focus the attention of state government on this important part of life for our families. So that bill got through committee and it passed the full Senate, which was great. The amended version of the bill that did pass didn't actually create the office, but directed the various departments to create a plan to create the office by this November. So that syncs up with work that the Council for Thriving Children is doing and also syncs up with the budget cycle. So that means in the next budget cycle next year, there will be a plan to create the office. So again, when you're working on bills, you have to think through sort of the logistics of the legislative cycle, but also sort of the political calculations about building support, building bipartisan support. And so I think the Office of Early Childhood bill really reflects that collaborative work, kind of building on what's happening in the community and trying to build that political support in the legislature. So the other bill I wanted to mention this year that I'm working on is Senate Bill 444. This is the ACEs Treatment and Prevention Act. So we know that there are a lot of families and young children who have experienced significant trauma. And those children are in our elementary schools and will be in our elementary schools for the next decade, as we deal with a significant opioid crisis in New Hampshire. As we come out of the pandemic, we know that there are a lot of families who are going to need a lot of extra support and children who are not getting a lot of extra support. So Senate Bill 444 looks at the early childhood mental health system and does a lot of different things, but it looks to build up the workforce in early childhood mental health, to support different interventions that we have in New Hampshire for early childhood mental health, like child parent psychotherapy. It looks at supporting the primary prevention system we have in New Hampshire of family resource centers, supporting and expanding that. And so that's an important bill, both on the services side and the system side. That bill is still in committee. And we are hopeful that we'll be able to get that out of committee. Again, we're looking at directing a lot of federal dollars. We have unprecedented federal investment, federal dollars floating around the state that we haven't spent yet. The state has not even spent, not even close to half of the ARPA discretionary dollars. So we really need to be using those dollars in a way that will set up our children and families for success. And so I'm incredibly committed to, marshaling those dollars to support our early childhood system. So I'll stop there. If folks have specific questions about the bills, I'm happy to talk about that, or we can just transition into a sort of general advocacy conversation. So does anyone have a question about those 4 bills that I mentioned?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for being a champion for young children and families in New Hampshire. We're really grateful for your leadership on these fronts. With particular to the bills, will you just give us a status on where they are in the legislative process? I think 446 had a hearing earlier this week, but kind of where they are and what the next steps are.
Yep. So Senate Bill 446, we've had a full public hearing in committee. We discussed it in executive session, which is where we vote on bills out of committee. We discussed it again this week and had some folks from Rochester and Henniker, actually early childhood providers, providing some additional testimony in the bill, but it is stuck in committee. And so I think that is a bill that we need continued advocacy on in committee. How important it is, what a crisis the workforce situation really is. That bill, actually, Amy provided some really good suggestions on that we incorporated into an amendment that we're trying to get out of committee. Amy, I don't know if I've sent that to you. So there's continued advocacy necessary for Senate Bill 446 to get a good recommendation out of the committee before it goes to the full Senate. Senate Bill 326 has passed the full Senate. It will move over to the House. So we're going to need some continued advocacy in the House, which is the wild, wild west in New Hampshire. Senate Bill 444 is also still in committee. We have an amendment that we're trying to get out of committee. So there's continued advocacy on that to get a positive recommendation out of committee that will then go to the floor. And Senate Bill 144, which is that bill from last year that we brought back, is headed over to the House.
So I have a quick question, Senator. With Senate Bill 446, is that designed to be a sort of one-year pool of funding? Because I believe there's about $8 or $9 million that's attached to that bill to pay bonuses and what have you. But do you see this as a consistent form of funding for the workforce, or kind of a one-shot deal to kind of put a little pump into the arm of the workforce?
Yep. So both. So the bill creates a fund that will exist in state law. Okay. And so the $8 million appropriation is for this year. And then what will have to happen is next budget cycle, that fund will have to be refilled. So just as every budget cycle, we need to advocate for what's necessary for the community. And so I do see it as a bridge towards whenever DC can get their act together and get something across the finish line for further investment, but it is a fund that will stay in state law and that will need continued advocacy to be refilled.
Drew, any chance of getting state dollars to fill some of that funding?
Well, yeah, I think that's always a possibility. While we have the federal dollars, I think everyone wants to make sure it's spent in a way that supports early childhood. But certainly, the way that the way that we wrote the bill is that they can fill it with whatever dollars are available, both state or federal dollars.
Sunny, sorry, go ahead. If you have a follow-up, and then we'll go to Sunny.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just a thought, Rebecca, and it's more a strategic thought on the part of one community. A lot of the New Hampshire cities and towns are still sitting on their full ARPA allocations.
Yeah.
Because we're waiting to see what funding may come out of Washington via the infrastructure bill or pieces of Build Back Better that would help us to do some of the things that we might otherwise use our ARPA money on. And I keep thinking if we came up with a region-wide or statewide childcare investment opportunity that cities and towns could steer some of their ARPA monies to, in my mind, that would be so much more powerful potentially than random, sort of pots of money flowing out of one community surrounded by 10 that don't provide funding for childcare in the region. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's been any conversation at the state level about helping to steer some thinking around how communities might seed a fund, not a fund to be administered by the state of New Hampshire per se, but like a fund to be steered by the charitable foundation, or pick your entity. Any conversations happening about that approach?
No, there haven't. I mean, that's a brilliant idea. I know that the mayors, so since the pandemic started, the mayors of all the New Hampshire cities meet very frequently. Right. And they have come up with creative solutions for the use of their ARPA dollars in the cities, but I haven't heard anything as you described, and I think that is a great idea.
So sort of thing I would raise with Margaret Byrne at the New Hampshire Municipal Association to say, hey, Margaret, is it worth convening a discussion on this? Because I think there's more power in numbers, and okay, all right, that's helpful to get some context there.
Yeah.
And Sunny, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, back to SB 446. I've been hearing rumors, and I don't like to believe rumors, so I like to check them out. I've been hearing rumors that there's a lot of pushback from DHHS specifically about this bill and wanting to, just really change what it is and move toward more long-term infrastructure funding than rather than just the bonuses, that are suggested and that sort of thing. So what is there any validity to those rumors, and what should we be doing?
Yes, there is validity. It just happened, let's see, Wednesday in committee. I did not know that there was opposition from DHHS to the bill until I heard it in executive session on Wednesday. So it was a shock to me. I was very disappointed that had been happening behind closed doors. I have not heard directly from DHHS that they are opposed to this and that they think instead, we should just be working on infrastructure. But so that I was disappointed to hear that, but there are headwinds apparently. So I think continued pressure on senators on the HHS committee about how this is urgent and how DHHS is not focusing on workforce at this point. They are, there was $75 million of ARPA funds directed specifically to childcare in two different buckets, a stabilization bucket and a discretionary bucket. That stabilization money, is out the door, I believe. I don't know if the whole bucket is out, and the discretionary dollars are not out the door, and they are, have been slow, in my opinion, to develop a plan for the use of those discretionary dollars. It's just coming out now. So if DHHS wants to focus on infrastructure, that's great. They should do that with those ARPA discretionary dollars. But right now, this is a crisis. Our businesses, our providers, our workforce are barely surviving, and that's why SB 446 is so necessary. They can happen at the same time. So I think that's the message to our senators on the committee, if they have any hesitation, that these things can happen at the same time. There's enough money to do both, but this is a crisis that we really need to solve right now. And, or we're going to lose childcare providers, and those folks are not going to be able to go to work, and our businesses are going to suffer because of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Jen, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Hi, Senator. I was wondering if you have any information about Senate Bill 453 relative to the pre-kindergarten funding?
Yes, so that bill is Tom Sherman's bill, Senator Tom Sherman, and it's had a couple iterations. So we've been working with Senator Sherman to make sure he understands that any pre-K system needs to be more of a delivery system. Actually, Janet, will you go on mute back again? I think there's some feedback. Are other folks hearing that? There we go. So what I understand from the community is that, in New Hampshire, we already have such a fragile infant and toddler system, and that if we did a non-mixed delivery pre-K system, it would really decimate our infant and toddler providers. And so we really need to do a mixed delivery system. And so we also know that the Build Back Better framework was also a mixed delivery system. So Senator Sherman has an amendment to his pre-K bill to make sure that we are aligning that with New Hampshire's needs. So his bill, I think now is more of an enabling statute or enabling bill. So basically, if there are communities that want to do universal pre-K, the bill merely enables them to do that. There's no funding attached to it. But I think it is an important conversation to continue to have at the State House about the importance of pre-K. And also as a, when there is hopefully federal investment in pre-K, that we have the capacity to take those dollars in New Hampshire. Because I think if we got, you folks know better, but even if we got $1 bazillion for pre-K right now, and New Hampshire's not ready to stand that up, there's some work to be done to get that ready. And so I think that bill is a good start to have that conversation and potential placeholder when that federal investment does come. So that bill is still in committee. The department, the Education Committee will be voting on that bill after our break. So we're going into Senate break. So in 2 weeks, they will likely take that bill up and we'll see what happens.
So we're the advocacy work group of this early childhood kind of committee in the Upper Valley. And so kind of with that advocacy lens, how should we be mobilizing and who should we, who needs to hear from us? And we're kind of the likely advocates on the screen, but we are kind of tapped into a whole network of what I call the non-likely allies, kind of business leaders. We have a town administrator, and so how to best mobilize and elevate our voice and where should we be targeting those efforts?
Yeah, so I think, from, you folks are on the ground, from both businesses and providers. And, I think that senators really need to hear what level of crisis we really are in New Hampshire. And so, sharing that with senators, I think is so incredibly important. So right now, targeted advocacy to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee would be incredibly important. You could email Senator Jeb Bradley or Senator Jim Gray, request a meeting with them and share with them why, SB 446 or any other bill that you might be interested in is so important to the some folks, if who don't feel comfortable having a meeting with senators, could do a letter together. You all could draft a letter, sign-on letter, and send it to senators. And there was a sign-on letter for SB 446, which a lot of people did sign on to. So that's always a possibility. I will say on the email side, we get a gazillion emails, and so it's important for us to hear from the community, but I think making those phone calls, scheduling those meetings are really gonna have your voice break through the floods of emails that we get. And then, certainly targeted advocacy to the Health and Human Services Committee is important. And then as the bills move to the Senate floor, advocacy to the entire Senate can look different, like an email to the entire Senate, would be appropriate then. And then certainly as these bills head over to the House, it's a whole different ballgame. So House members are just, our friends and neighbors. They tend to need more education because there's just so many of them. And so coming before the committee in a public hearing would be excellent. If, maybe one member of the group came and shared a letter from the whole group. So coming to the State House and sharing testimony is incredibly important, I think, in the House. Amy, did you have a question about that?
I guess what I was hearing from DHHS about in the pushback is, and I don't know, this is a more recent conversation, is, looking at the Senate Bill 332 for the long-term care ask is pretty significant. It's like $300 a week. And this is, for a full-time employee, $1,200 a year. I know that that one would be short-term. It would be probably a year's worth, maybe 18 months of funding. And this is more to establish an ongoing fund. But DHHS, and I'm not saying DHHS as a whole, I'm just saying the conversation was that the ask was big enough, that it won't move the needle enough, and that it may be confusing to other legislators thinking, oh, but that solved the problem. They have CELA and now they have, $1,200 a year, they're good, when it really doesn't move the wage issue, maybe $1 an hour. So I think that was part of the conversations that I've had, is that it was like a third of their budget or a quarter of their budget to spend on discretionary, and it wasn't a big enough ask. I feel like there's a lot of, it's like hooking dogs to like a dog sled, and they're all going different directions instead of like going one direction. So just, getting Council for Thriving Children, DHHS, if this Office of Early Childhood, do you see the Office of Early Childhood kind of guiding that work to kind of pull the pieces together? Because it doesn't seem like it seems like DHHS and DOE were supposed to come together in the Office.
That's right.
In council, but what are you seeing? Like, what is your vision for that?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, it's not my vision. The vision for the state is, has always been to take, so for DOE and DHHS to come together and create this office. That was actually in the governor's order creating the Council for Thriving Children. They were supposed to do that, but it hasn't happened yet. And the Council for Thriving Children has been leading that work, but they might go away, right? So they were funded by the preschool development grant, which is going to run out. And so we need to think about a sustainability vision. And so that's what it's sort of steps, right? In the process, we had the governor's executive order, then we had the Council for Thriving Children. And now the next step is to actually just do the thing and create the office. And so there are building blocks in New Hampshire. We have to take these steps towards systems change. We can't do everything all at once. I recognize that. And so the vision is just sort of building on the work. We got the preschool development grant. We looked at the appropriate governance that could move the work forward. We know that the office is that next step. And so we just have to do it, right? I'm a less patient person than others when it comes to system reform. Like sometimes I think you just got to do the thing rather than keep talking about the thing. Talking about it is important, but sometimes you just got to take action. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question, Brooke?
Sure, one more, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay. So Senator, one of the things I'm seeing at the various advocacy tables that I've been sitting at is there are a lot of early childhood bills that are in front of the legislature right now. And there have been concerns raised that the ways in which these bills are assigned to committees, and that some committees have different expertise than others. And sometimes bills come out with contradictory kind of provisions and what have you. Do you see those dynamics inhibiting the sort of forward momentum that we need to see? And what could be done to kind of strengthen the way in which the legislature not only kind of develops bills, but the ways in which they move through the legislature?
I actually would disagree, Michael, that there are a lot of early childhood bills. There are not. I listed the 3 that are in the Senate. I'm not aware of the other ones that are in the House, but I don't think there are a lot of early childhood bills, frankly. Go ahead. Sorry. I know that New Futures hosts an early childhood advocacy table. I think that's really important. It is hard to, I think that there has been difficulty sort of getting all the advocates on the same page. in terms of advocacy, which I get, people care really deeply about it. I think these advocacy tables are helpful to build consensus. And I mean, that's where all the bills that I introduced really came out of. What were the consensus that were coming out of the advocacy space. I didn't make them up. They really came out of work that was brought to me. So yeah, I'll sort of end there. I mean, there, of course, legislators so for example, I have a professional background in this work, but most legislators are just like our friends and neighbors. They have no expertise in any area. And so we really we're a citizen legislature. Like I get paid $100 a year to do this. So like we really rely on community experts to guide us in this work. And, for example, Amy gave me some language suggestions that I just wasn't aware of, or this regional work that I just wasn't aware of. And so we really rely on the community to make our bills better. And I know I'm always grateful when I receive feedback. And so I would encourage folks to continue to provide feedback to your legislatures to make the work better.
On that note, Senator Whitley, I'm going to thank you so much for working together with this committee. And I expect that we will be talking with you more as the weeks and months go by. New Hampshire is a puzzling place sometimes to find your way through. So the work you're doing is much appreciated, and the guidance you're offering us is helpful too.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. And you actually have set us up nicely for the next part of our agenda this morning, and talking about the importance of advocates being on the same page and working together and having some common frameworks. Matt Levin, who has been participating in this process, beginning with the symposiums in November, is the executive director of the Vermont Early Childhood Advocacy Alliance. So see you, Senator. So those last two words, Advocacy Alliance, is truly significant. And as usual, we have the complexity of different approaches to the very same issues in Vermont and New Hampshire. So Matt, thank you for making the time and being prepared to talk with us both about what's happening in Vermont and about thoughts for this work group from your vantage point as a professional in this advocacy space. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah, and everyone else. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry I couldn't be here for the beginning of the meeting. I had a previously scheduled coalition meeting that went until 10 o'clock. So it would help me. I won't ask to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. That's sort of rude since I showed up late. But I think it would be helpful to get a sense of if people had some way of signifying with a gesture or with a symbol in their box, how many of you feel like you're familiar with the Alliance and what we do, and how we're built? So thumbs up, wave. Okay, so sort of mix. So why don't I go back and sort of start at the beginning? So thanks to those of you who are familiar with our work, but for the benefit of the whole group, I'll be brief, but I'll sort of go back to the beginning. So our coalition has its roots in the Kids Are Priority 1 coalition, which some people may be familiar with, which was focused just on childcare, started in 2000. There's a whole very charming, sort of amusing personal history about meeting in a senator's barn and people being frustrated. And it's a great story, but it's not our story. It's another group's story. But it started as a coalition focused on just childcare. And around 2011, 2012, there was a growing sense that that structure wasn't working, that the problems were much bigger than just childcare, and that to partly speak to the senator's comment, there needed to be a little bit more professionalization of the staff and having it be more supported by a separate structure that wasn't within the members of the coalition, but was sort of a freestanding structure that was allowed to surround the work of all the organizations within. So the Turtle Fund and others supported a process that the organization went through 2012, 2013. And I took over as executive director in 2014 and finished that transformative process that resulted in the renaming of the coalition and also making the focus be much larger about public policy in general affecting kids 0 to 8. So it's not just childcare, it's mental health, other health issues, nutrition, housing, economic security, et cetera, whole broad range. So we have a board that's made up of 21 folks, some of whom are actually organizations, some are individuals. And we actually further changed our name in, I think it was 2018, to include the word advocacy right in our name. As Sara pointed out, advocacy is an important part of what we do. It is what we do. It's the only thing we do. And so it seemed very important to put that right in our name so people understood who we were and what we were about. So we're a statewide coalition that is made up of individuals and organizations that are concerned about public policy issues and bettering the lives of children 0 to 8 and young families. And we provide advocacy and advocacy support. So that phrase advocacy support is important because it goes beyond just simply lobbying. We do that, but we're really here to support the voices of our member organizations and our members to have a voice in the process, whether it's as an individual organization or a person having an opinion about a bill or an issue, or as an organization or a coalition having a strategic plan, a path forward, messaging, and materials and concrete thoughts and the policy background that you need to move the issue forward. We don't do policy development very much here. We don't do service delivery. Really, all we do is advocacy. That's what we do. We have a small staff of 3, one of whom is a back of the house person. I'm the executive director and the front of the house person. And we have a third staff person who kind of helps on both in terms of helping me in the State House and also working on community outreach and organizing in the community and so on and so forth. That's been very limited because of COVID, but that's part of our main mission. So we do have an annual legislative agenda, and the agenda is developed from our members' input. It's not the case that 3 people sit in a room and decide what the priorities are for the early childhood community. It's the exact opposite of that. We're a platform, a plaza, a marketplace where our member organizations can bring their ideas for campaigns and say, hey, we want to do this, and we'd love the community support. And what we provide is a way for the rest of the community to evaluate those ideas. We do this every fall through our process of developing our legislative agenda. We have a mini grant application kind of format that basically asks the lead organizations, do you have your act together? Is your idea at least half-baked? Do you have some policy background? Have you thought about who your legislative champions are? Do you have staff assigned to this? And we bring those applications, that information to our steering committee. They look at these ideas and make sure that A, everyone agrees with the policy goal, and B, the lead organization has it together enough so that we can rally behind them and say, yes, we support them. Some of those issues are huge, some are tiny. Some of our lead organizations are huge, some are tiny. So our support is all over the place. There are no priorities. I joke all the time, I love all my children equally. All of our campaigns are important. Some of them, all we need to do is show up at a press conference and say, yay, go team. Others, I'm in the trenches every day doing sort of hand-to-hand with legislators, trying to persuade them to do some tiny thing to get $800,000 for a program, right? And to try to sort out prioritization in that context is a hopeless exercise. So we don't even bother. It's all, they're all important, and we work on all of them in sort of a collaborative and juggling way to try to move as many of them forward as possible. So it is an interesting model. It's a unique model, and it works. We're the connective tissue that tries to hold everyone together to make sure that the early childhood community is collaborative, coordinating, communicating, lots of C words, and make sure that when legislators say things like, well, you can only have, you can have childcare or nutrition, which would you like? Our answer is no. We're not going to do that. Like that's no. And we've built relationships and we know each other and we meet on a regular basis weekly during the legislative session so that we can predict when those things are happening. And the senior staff talk to each other and are able to work together, especially when we're in the building in the State House, but even remotely, to try to collaborate our messages, see these when these conflicts may be emerging, help each other with messaging, help each other with massaging and trying to help get legislators to a better place, and work together, but also respect that everyone's working on their issues. I'm almost done with my introduction and then I'll stop. I joke, some of you, at least a couple of you, have heard me talk about this, that we're built on this fiction, this illogical notion that everyone around our table gets to say that their issue is the most important issue for kids. And we need that, right? The housing people need to say housing is medicine. Without housing, nothing works. Without stable housing, families fall apart and kids can't be healthy. And you need the nutrition people to say, if kids don't have a healthy start when it comes to food, everything else falls apart. And every one of our advocacy niches, they need to say their thing is the most important. And yet it can't possibly be true that every issue is the most important issue, right? And that just is not functionally possible. Humans don't work that way. But the deal is that you're never allowed to say to your partners around the table that they're wrong, right? So you're allowed to say that your issue is the most important, and your neighbor says that something else is the most important, and we smile at each other and shake hands and say, yep. And you're allowed to keep talking about your issue being the most important, and they're allowed to say their issue is the most important. And we recognize that that's how advocacy works. And we don't criticize or critique each other, even though logically it's not possible for everyone's issues to be the most important at the same time. That's the fiction that our table is built around. And it works because of trust and relationships and a long time of working together, and an organization that says, we're the neutral convener. We're going to make sure this works. And, when someone steps out of line, we're here to help everyone get back on the same page. And occasionally that's what we have to do. So there's a lot of work that's been done. There's a lot of balls in the air, a lot of things that have been happening. I can speak to them individually, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily my job here today. I'm going to post, I just put in the chat a link to our mid-session update that has an update on where we are on each of the issues that are on our legislative agenda. I'm happy to talk about them in detail. Sara, I'm not sure where you want the conversation to go, but that's a general overview of who we are and what we do. Again, it's a unique structure. It doesn't really exist in other states. As you just discussed, New Hampshire is its own world with its own unique set of ways of doing things. Vermont, similarly, we're built for Vermont, but we do think that the lessons learned from our work does apply to other places, and there's a lot of good in our model that can be used in other states as well.
Matt, can you speak about specific legislation going on right now around the early care and education piece, around the shortage of workforce, this shortage of resource? Yeah.
Happy to. So that's it. Let me just preface it first and then segue to the details. So as I mentioned, the development of our legislative agenda is predicated on the work of our lead organizations. So there's a lot of work going on in Vermont already on most issues, and almost any issue that someone in this group could say, I'd like to participate in, there's a statewide organization that's working on it. And I'd encourage you to engage with them. You can do that through our website, through our legislative agenda. There are links to the lead organizations. And there's a lot of dynamic and very complex advocacy happening, which makes it hard for us to update people because it literally changes day by day as to what's really going on. In the early childhood education space, the main organization, the lead organizations are Let's Grow Kids and Vermont AEYC, who are increasingly working together. That's a whole nother story, perhaps for another time, but I'm happy to talk about that if people would like to hear about the dynamics of what's going on in that particular advocacy space. But in the shorter term, there's a push for both improving our voucher program, CCFAP, putting more money into it, expanding eligibility, moving the eligibility up the income brackets, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a very big there's an idea to make that totally different than it is, so that no family has to pay more than 10% of their income on childcare, and having a hugely expanded childcare voucher program. Again, not a topic for this year. There's also recognition of the workforce issues. Interestingly, and to get to your question, Sarah, interestingly, in the Vermont legislature right now, every single space in the economic sphere is coming into the State House saying we're having workforce challenges. I think that's the same everywhere. To the point where about 6 months ago, we realized that trying to push hard on the childcare workforce issue was not going to be very successful, because there aren't workers anywhere. Like it's not like people are, I mean, yes, there are specific challenges in the childcare space. I'm not trying to minimize that, but it's the legislators didn't want to hear that we had special problems with childcare, because those problems weren't, frankly, all that special. There were problems in the medical sphere as well. And there are other areas that have similar sort of combinations of pipeline issues and pay issues that, because it's a social services landscape, it's not like there's money sitting around to push out to the workers. There isn't enough money in the system to begin with. So we're challenged by the fact that raising wages is not a simple turn of the knob, right? A key part of the issue is that we're not paying these people enough. It's not clear how you pay them more. It's not clear where the money comes from or what the mechanism is to pay them more. So that's a challenge. There are proposals to try to increase scholarship programs, to increase loan forgiveness programs, to try to increase retention bonuses and other sort of one-off income supplement ideas. There are proposals to try to make healthcare more affordable. There's a proposal to make all childcare workers eligible for full coverage under CCFAP, so that if they have children themselves in childcare, they have to pay nothing for their children's childcare. So there are some kind of band-aids and patches that are being discussed, but I'd say for better, for worse, the focus is switching to the big picture, the big ask, the big solution, which is to put enough money into the system on the state level so that wages get elevated, so that the workforce stays, because there's enough pay to help them pay their bills, to pay for the college education that's being asked of them, to pay for the higher education, the certifications that are being asked of them, so that we relieve this pressure, because there's enough support in the system so that the workforce challenges solve themselves. I mean, I think there's a sense that like the intermediate solution isn't going to work. We can put on some patches and then we need to change the whole underlying system. That's where the conversation is focused right now. Patches for now, big picture in the longer run. We tried the sort of intermediate level for a while, increasing the TEACH program, so on. And I think that those kinds of things, that was in place before the pandemic. The pandemic completely upset the apple cart. And, as we've heard it from many people, exposed the weaknesses that already exist and exacerbated them, right? So it's not a good answer, Sarah. It's not, it doesn't feel great, but strategically and contextually with what's going on in the State House and the rest of the economy, a lot of thought has been put into it, and this seems like the best answer at the time. Anyone who wants to really get into this, I encourage you to talk to our colleagues at Vermont AAYC and LGK, who have literally spent thousands of hours trying to figure out what to do about this. This is not like, oh yeah, we should do something about this. We have been thinking about this collectively for months and years, and where we are as a result of a lot of really hard work and good thinking that isn't going to give us a good solution. But again, I support the fact that it's pretty much the best we've got given the context that we're working in. That was a very long answer, Sarah, but I tend to give longer answers.
I do know you tend to give longer answers, but they're often more helpful because they give a broader and more meaningful picture. I'd like to invite people listening to this at this point to ask questions of Matt, to share what's in your mind when you hear this. And especially as we're trying to figure out how to use our energies in looking at both New Hampshire and Vermont landscapes, as we're trying to work for better options and opportunities for families here in this bi-state area.
And Michael and I talk about this a lot, but I'm always so struck by how different the conversation is on the New Hampshire side of the river versus the Vermont side of the river. I mean, Vermont's talking about making it so that parents don't have to pay more than 10% of their income towards childcare. And New Hampshire, we're like, oh, we're starting from scratch, and maybe we can get some money for the workforce when federal dollars come through. But Matt, I guess kind of how, because with the strategy of kind of setting your policy agenda in the fall, how are you reactive and responsive to kind of issues that flare up? And we're in such a state where we're often like putting out the fires. So how do you respond to kind of immediate emergencies?
Yes. We joke all the time that, well, we can set our agenda in October, November, December, but that's, the governor isn't asking us. The governor's recommended budget gets released towards the end of January, and then all hell breaks loose, right? So I would say that the long-term strategy and investing in long-term campaign building really helps. And to get to your previous comment, I can't help but point that, and I've talked with Sara about this extensively. In Vermont, we have focused a lot on figuring out who is doing what, getting them to focus on doing that, and having everyone understand, without being pretentious, what your lane is, and staying in your lane and doing your lane well. Not because we're obnoxious, but because that's good organizational strategy. And part of what our organization does is remind people about that and help them do that by supporting them and also holding them accountable and sort of demanding a certain amount of focus so that everyone understands what you're doing, and calling and saying, okay, it's the weekly update. What's your update? Let's, stay focused. So there's been lots of work on that, and I'm happy to talk about that another time, but it's related because we've gotten everyone in our community to buy into this, the way we do our agenda building. And we follow a collective impact model. And it's sort of like every year we reauthorize the collective impact structure. People embrace it because they come to us, they participate in our annual process. That's how they agree to do this collective action and collective accountability. I'm getting to your question, I promise. So by encouraging campaign building, what we're encouraging is reaching out to legislators, reaching out to your colleagues, reaching out to the administration and saying, hey, we're trying to do this thing. Will you be on board? And by having the conversations about what the organization's goals are, you surface what other goals might exist out there. So if you say to a legislator, hey, I really want to work on a bill to loosen regulations about fencing at childcare programs, I'm just making that up. No one's doing that. It's totally made up. A legislator might say, well, that's interesting because I've got an idea about changing regulations for hand washing. Okay, well, now you found out about that in August because we send out our application that says, okay, everyone, it's time to build your campaigns. We're expecting you to come to the table in October with the things at least half baked. One of the questions is, who are your champions? So get out there. We start getting on the phone. Are you doing it? Can we help you? Right? And then you talk to a legislator who says, I'm doing hand washing. Then you're not surprised in January when the bill drops and you see the hand washing bill, right? So by building that communication into campaign building, you start the virtuous cycle of communication and collaboration going. And we're still surprised every January by stuff that shows up. Don't get me wrong, but we are surprised by fewer things. And we have many more relationships of trust and communication established so that when they come up, we're in a situation to say, you know, Representative, I thought we talked about the fence thing, you know, and they'll say, oh yeah, the hand washing thing, I'm just doing that to appease my neighbor. Like, don't worry about it. I'm on board with your fence thing. You know, it's okay, right? And so then you know that, and so, you know, there's just some political theater going on. Don't need to get upset. Don't need to react to the hand washing thing. Focus on the fence thing, and we can proceed on that, right? And those little, like, saving yourself from the 6 hours of being theatrically responsive to the bill that actually is irrelevant, right? Getting those fires out of the way. Don't have them. Get them out of the, that gives you a lot more energy and a lot more positive energy and time to focus on communication and coalition building and all the rest. And so when you start limiting those little brush fires, the improvement is amazing. And so this is something that you don't just snap your fingers and create. We've been doing it for many years now. And we've created this culture, and again, this virtuous cycle of communication that makes it so that, yes, we're always surprised. We're always surprised. Every year, the governor comes up with at least one thing that is just, or sometimes the legislators come up with something they didn't talk to us about. In Vermont, there's a huge example of that. We were not talked about. We did not get any communication about the child tax credit proposal that has swallowed up $50 million of the state budget. And that's, again, I keep saying, it's a whole nother conversation. If people want to have it, I'm happy to have it. We had no advance warning about that. It has completely changed the context of our advocacy. It's a problem. We support the idea in general, but we are being told by legislative leadership, sorry, there's no money for any early childhood thing because we put it all in the child tax credit. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't ask us about that. Like, you know, and they're like, you don't support the proposal? You know, of course we support the proposal. But we can have these very difficult conversations in a context of years of relationship building and communication, which makes it a lot easier. So, Brooke, I think that's the idea, is that slow buildup of that skill set, that muscle memory of how to do this makes it so that when surprises do happen, there's a very different context to reaction as opposed to, you know, hair on fire. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? We still have a few of those, but we have fewer.
So
Does
Matt,
that answer your question?
Two follow-ups. Amy had sent me a note or question she had when her camera wasn't working right, but she's back on, I see. So I'm going to let her ask her own question. And then I have another one also. And once again, others may have that. So Amy, go ahead with yours.
Yeah, so in some of the, not very many early childhood bills in New Hampshire, I've been able to engage with a couple of particular senators, and, you know, including Senator Whitley, who came to this advocacy meeting. Is there anyone from Vermont that this group could engage to, I mean, and I even worked with them on language and things like that. So is there anyone that you recommend that might be interested, that, you know, we're calling them our champions? Is there a Vermont champion for Upper Valley that we could engage?
You have embarrassed me by asking the question that I should have anticipated. My apologies. What I would say, so I'd say, I'm going to answer your question specifically, but I'm going to make a more general point. If you click on the link that is in the top of the chat, the bottom of the chat, the Salsa Labs thing, you'll see at the top of that is a link to signing up for our early childhood day at the legislature, which is on March 9th. Some of you already know about this. We have a whole event that's set up to enable these kinds of conversations. And it's the key of the day is a regional lunch. It used to be in person. We're going to go back in person. This year it's a hybrid, but we have tables set up so that regional advocates can meet with legislators from their region. So, you know, the Upper Valley is sort of bifurcated, but, you know, we'd have folks from Orange and Windsor counties and Caledonia County sit at tables, and you would be assigned to those tables, and you get a chance to talk directly to legislators about issues that matter to you. So I'd encourage folks to sign up for that event. It's virtual this year. You don't have to drive to Montpelier. You can do it from the comfort of your home. You'll be zooming in. for the day. The legislators at the lunch will be coming to the hotel across the street from the State House, and they'll be zoomed in from the hotel. There's a complicated logistics we're having to work through. But, so that's that. In Vermont, the committee that you are on has a critical impact on what issues you work on. I'm not familiar with the New Hampshire arrangement as much. In Vermont, the both chambers are incredibly deferential to the policy committees that work on the issues in question. And as it turns out, as I suspected, unfortunately, there are actually very few legislators from your neck of the woods that are on the committee's jurisdiction on the issues that are most connected to our issues. And it's just coincidental and unfortunate and frustrating. As I'm reviewing the list, there are literally no legislators from your geographic area that are on the committees that really oversee the early childhood space.
That's pretty profound. That's pretty profound. And how do we make that be visible?
Well, I think it's sort of accidental. I don't think it's intentional. But I do know that Representative Becca White is planning to come to early childhood at the legislature. Very community engaged, very supportive in a sort of general way to early childhood issues, not her professional or personal focus area. Interestingly, we also have a citizen legislature, so her life journey, no kids yet, so doesn't have that personal connection, but very much someone who I would think of as a friend to us. I mean, I know her personally, I can talk to her. I think Senator Clarkson is someone, she's in leadership, but Windsor County, definitely someone who has a kid perspective, who I would say would be open to our set of needs and would be interested in hearing from us about what we're doing and what's going on in our world. But I'd also say that, Sara, it's important to reach out to all your legislators, regardless of their committee assignments, to begin the path to get them to care. You have to try, you have to build that bridge, and eventually one of them may get onto a different committee at some point, or the light bulb might get turned on. It happens. I mean, I don't mean to minimize or whatever, but I have seen it. They most of them are older, they have grandkids, and all of a sudden they care about early childhood issues. I mean, it's just sort of the way it goes. So I think there's a lot of space for growth and development there. There isn't a early childhood champion that jumps to mind from the Upper Valley region, but there are a lot of folks who are friendly and supportive, and it's a good place to pour some energy and put some attention.
Great, thank you. In deference to our agenda and the time, what I would do is turn to the group and ask if there are any questions for Matt right now, and knowing that he's available, and I'm hoping he'll continue to be part of the conversation and process here, but any more for today?
So I would just add a comment. It's not a question for Matt per se, but it's going back to your question, Brooke. I've seen time and time again on the New Hampshire side, we tend to lament how much harder our row is to hoe than it seemingly is on the Vermont side, Vermont typically being a more progressive state. However, I've also seen that when we work in the Upper Valley on bi-state issues, and New Hampshire tries to sort of surf off of the energy and the perspective coming from Vermont, we're pretty innovative and can sometimes put the rest of New Hampshire to a bit of shame. And maybe, Matt, we benefit our Vermont side partners at the same time. So the optimist in me would like to think that together on the childcare front, we may be able to cook up something pretty innovative on both sides of the river, given the employer support we can tend to drum up here. I just think it's worth keeping our eyes on that prize and sort of saying to hell with what our states are or are not doing, or are capable of doing right now. Let's get something done that reflects what we see as our regional priorities around childcare and get some attention from our elected officials on each side of the river. So I just would like to say, go team. I know Hanover gets really tired of waiting for our legislature to get its act together. We're not known as being patient to sort of trail off what Rebecca was sharing in terms of her lack of patience, because sometimes things happen at a glacial pace in the New Hampshire legislature. And so throw caution to the winds would be my argument for advocating for something bolder than we're seeing either of our states willing to commit to at this point.
Keep being our champion.
Yeah.
That's great, Julia. All
And
right.
no, I appreciate that. And I think it's a good segue too for some updates, both from all of you and just kind of some of the work of the steering committee, the Vital Communities kind of steering committee, which we meet on the weeks that our advocacy work group doesn't meet. So we stagger every other week. And so kind of the charge right now is to develop, kind of to what Senator Whitley was saying, is to develop some recommendations for the ARPA discretionary dollars in New Hampshire specifically. There's a movement kind of going down, happening in Southern New Hampshire with New Hampshire Early Learning, and they're pulling together a plan. And so we were kind of sitting in the Upper Valley saying like, well, we're not included in that conversation. So we're working to develop our own recommendations that are more specific to the Upper Valley region of New Hampshire. And we'll be looking to kind of you all to help sign off on that, to give your blessing to it so that it carries a little more weight when we present it to the Commissioner Cromwell.
Taylor Caswell.
Thanks. I'm not in New Hampshire, so I'm trying really hard to be immersed into the politics, but I'm learning too.
It's called fake it till you make it, Brooke. You're doing really well.
Okay. And so that's just so you know, there are kind of strands happening. And then I know we had on the agenda to talk about the Valley News article. I know the article was picked up in other outlets too in New Hampshire about the Senate bill and about compensation for the early childhood workforce. And Amy and Sara, I'll kind of kick it back over to you around some reactions and planned responses around that article and next steps there.
Well, so what we're talking about is the bill that Senator Whitley is sponsoring around the extra funds to early childhood personnel. It was pointed out that they amount to about $1,200 a year per person, and Amy was flagging where the Senator Whitley was talking this morning about having been surprised that there was opposition from DHHS, and Amy was flagging where that opposition might have come from. And then the Valley News article last week had been touting this with language that suggested that if this bill passed and this money came forward, it's kind of like, okay, we got those people all pretty set then. And we were concerned maybe about speaking up and saying, wait a minute, it's a great gesture, but it truly in its substance is a gesture, not a solution. And so I'm curious now in hearing that this is now stuck in committee. And Amy, you had more recent conversation about it. Are we in a spot where it is important to do an op-ed article or a letter to the editor of the Valley News in reaction to their article? Where should we be putting our energy?
So my kind of gut tells me from the conversations I'm in that the CELA piece wasn't asked for. There was a survey done in the fall, and I think they had over 400 respondents saying, what do we do with this discretionary money? We're going to pick the top, whatever, the top most popular things, and we're going to put the discretionary money there. And I was in that process. Michael, I think were you in that process where we looked at those answers? I don't remember if you were on that group. Been on so many groups in the past fall, but it was workforce, families. There was no mention of CELA, which is a shared services platform. It's very expensive. I guess I read the bill. In the bill, they're asking for, it's $2,500 a year, $2,400 a year per center per year, regardless of the size of the center to join. They're giving them a discounted rate of $2,100. The bill was kind of, it was launched and kind of conceptualized by Early Learning New Hampshire, who carries CELA. So there was this piece with DHHS that, that's not really what the focus should be. It should be on the workforce and a solution for the workforce. So I also just read the bill from Vermont, and it looks like 60 million. It went through the House to for essential workers, but it's only like or for a year or 18 months, but it equals $3,000 a year. There's also that workforce bill for healthcare in New Hampshire that would equal $150 a week for part-time, $300 a week for full-time. So there's like all these numbers out there, and you wonder if we're asking for 8.9 million, if that's just not enough. And then there's this assumption, like Sara just said, that, okay, the wage thing is fixed. Why isn't the childcare thing fixed? We put that'll be $140 million since the beginning of the pandemic in early childhood in New Hampshire, and the problem's not solved yet. So I don't know if DHHS wanted to slow down, like she was saying, they move very slowly, wanted to slow down and comprehensively put a package together and not compete for funds. That's where I kind of see that bill right now, but nothing else is out there, and we do need help. So I don't, like I said, for an experience, I think it's over 4 years of experience, you would get $1,200 a year in quarterly payments, right, Michael? So that's kind of, I guess, if I were to, the thing that really stands out is this establishes a fund, and the end of the bill, it says that this will be refilled. Like, this becomes legislation. This is not a one-time piece, which is not in the Vermont language, which is that the money will end, that this is an emergency COVID related response. I guess that would be where I would frame it, is that we need to get something in legislation, and if this has momentum, do we go with it?
So I'm going to, at this point, say thank you for helping to flesh out how complicated this stuff gets to be and where some of the pieces are on this. So I think that what we'll be doing is going ahead with writing to help continue the conversation. And I think everything that we do that brings forward these issues is important, and the tone I think that we would take would be one of explanation rather than one of position per se. The other thing that we've got like 3 minutes left or something that I wanted to flag was that Erica was incredibly helpful in sharing work that a group that she's part of is doing in terms of pushing Dartmouth College to pay attention and to and become seriously engaged. She shared with us a letter that had been signed by 350 members of the Dartmouth College community asking for attention to this. And Sarah Jackson and Amy and I met with a group that was designated by the provost and the vice president for some fancy title, but Rick Mills at the college. He's basically in charge of operations and finance, and the provost is in charge of the academic and product side of the college, if you will. If I've sort of reasonably got that right. And so there's a committee about the work-life
council.
Yep. And so we met with them earlier in the week to talk about what is going on, talk about the complications of this. And in the meantime, we received word like 6 hours before that meeting that the college had indeed committed funding to this Vital Communities project, which for 3 years to match the money that's been provided by the Couch Family Foundation and the City of Lebanon. So that there will be full funding for 3 years for a project manager for this work, and possibly an assistant too, based in Vital Communities. So, so there's a commitment to help this effort as part of the Dartmouth initiative. We're hoping it's the beginning of a conversation that council really looks like they're doing some really good research and talking to thoughtful and well-informed people as they're putting together their picture and they work toward recommendations. We did give a list of recommendations to them about what specific things the college could do beyond money, what they could do with their name, their resources, their personnel, their expertise at a granular level, working individually with centers. You know, again, this is, you know, on the level of what are some immediate short-term relief things, and then the bigger picture that, you know, that Matt was describing in Vermont is like the big system, the true big system picture, how Dartmouth could play at both levels of that pond. So that has been work that's gone on since the last meeting of this team. You've got the last 1 minute, Brooke, or Matt, did you want to make a comment?
Well, I do want to make a comment, but it's a big comment and I don't know if it's appropriate for 1 minute. So if it's not, maybe Sarah, you could stick on afterwards and I could share it with you in a conversation.
Okay, why don't we do it that way?
That's fine.
Okay, Brooke?
Yeah, unless anybody else have anything they want to share.
I'll just thank you for including us as part of the conversation. We're happy to be part of these conversations moving forward. This is what we do. This is, I joke all the time. I'm not doing you a favor. This is my job. I mean, I like doing it, as you can tell. I'm very passionate about it. So we're grateful to be part of these conversations. We look for them. We want to be part of them. And Brooke and Sara and Amy know how to find us and find me. Happy to be participating in any of these kinds of conversations moving forward. Please use us as a resource. We're glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And thank you for your time.
Great, thank you.
This morning too.
Yeah.
For the next meeting, can I add something to the agenda? I'll let everybody go. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
So
we
long to the
do
group.
with Friday mornings and we'll send follow-up information, but I think, you know, and you know how to reach us in between these meetings. So don't hesitate to reach out. All right.
Okay.
Thank
And
you,
Brooke, I think
everybody.
you're the
Appreciate
host, so
your
we
time.
can say goodbye to others. And then Matt, I will
Yeah, I'm gonna